Welcome to Masterclass 2, Community Building and Social Media for DAOs. This is part 2 of a 3-part series specifically focused on DAOs, presented for the Cardano community. Obviously something that anybody in any community who's working on DAOs, attempting to build a DAO, just wants to know more about DAOs, can learn from and apply to their own projects. So we're really excited to do this one. The first session of this was done from the legal perspective. We're doing the marketing, community building, social media perspective. And then the third one will be in 2 weeks, and it will be about how to build a DAO on Cardano. So it should be really intriguing as well. And here we go. So this is community building overview. Just a quick look at what we're going to be covering. Some of the most fundamental aspects of running a DAO project. What's the difference between success and failure? It's often very small, and when it comes to community, it can be very complicated. So it's something that you really need to be kind of targeting and focused on from day one, actually really day -1 when you're getting ready to build a DAO, keeping everything in mind. Reputation is everything. Again, when you're working with people, which is really what a DAO is, you really have to keep in mind how you're being perceived by everybody who's involved in the project. Everybody has a vote, everybody has a say, and people nowadays are very, very vocal when it comes to projects online. And again, word of mouth spreads quickly. Can impact the price of a project's crypto assets. This is just something to keep in mind. Not every single DAO is based on tokens, but a large portion of them are, which means that things that happen in your DAO or things that your DAO does can affect the price of your token or whatever you have associated with your DAO. So individual things happening in a DAO can affect and have real world ramifications. So definitely something to keep in mind, that everything that you do in this DAO world is very virtual, but can happen and take place everywhere else too. So points that we're going to be covering: DAO's purpose, your target audience, the culture of your community, communication, education, onboarding, transparency, trust building, and scaling your community. So it's all going to be very cool. That was your slide, I'm sorry.
No.
So when you are getting ready to build a DAO, you need to think about, what is your purpose? Why are you building a DAO? Does it even need to be a DAO? I think that's one of the most important questions that anybody in Web3 needs to think about when they're building a Web3 project is, does this need to be a Web3 project? Could it be something else that's simpler and you're only doing the Web3 side because it's cool and it's like this cool new thing? But there are occasions where having a DAO is exceptionally important, and I think it creates this idea that can propel your project a lot further because you have so many people involved. You're getting feedback from them. You have these really loyal people. They're all putting something towards this one project, even if you've never met in real life, and I think that's a really cool idea. So your DAO is there. Is it part of a larger ecosystem? Is it a standalone project? What are the goals? What are the values? Your vision statement, your mission statement. It sounds funny. These are all things that you should be doing as you're setting up any company. You need to think of your DAO like that as well. So what is your primary purpose? What is your vision for the DAO? Where do you want it to go? You know, you can have a vision board. Where do we see ourselves in 5 years? And these are all very important things to consider so that you can work backwards of, how does this DAO need to get started? Or where do we need to take this DAO if it's kind of wavering in a different direction? So what are you trying to achieve? Where are you trying to go? What is your purpose? Be honest, be straightforward, be authentic. Tell your members of your DAO, this is exactly what we have planned. They're signing on, they're trying to help you achieve the goals. So I think it's really, really important to be honest with them. And I think that's going to be kind of the watchword of anything when it comes to DAO is be honest and be forthright.
Yeah. So, yeah, they are putting their money generally in a DAO because it's something that they believe in. So yeah, honesty is definitely key.
So as you're building the DAO, you need to think about your target audience. This is something that you need to think about for any marketing focused thing, which a DAO actually is. Who is your demographic? their age, their gender, income, education, identity, occupation, location, industry. Any little niche that you could define someone as, you need to try and define who that is within your DAO. And the reason you need to do that is because then you'll know how to talk to them, how to find the people to be in your DAO, especially if you're just starting to build something. So you need to know what they want, what their pain points are, how to approach them, and what's going to make them want to come in and devote their time and their money towards your project, which is then going to become their project. So you need to have all of that kind of figured out. Sometimes it's going to be a little trial and error to see what's resonating with people. But once you have that, then you should be able to know how to reach them through their preferred marketing channels. Are you going to find them on Twitter? Are you going to find them through Facebook? Maybe you're a boomer DAO. Do you want to communicate with them through social media? Do you want to communicate with them through emails? Is this going to be like an old school DAO? Maybe you're going traditional and you're actually going to write letters. Who knows? You need to know, like, right? It would be really fun, I think. You need to think about like what your DAO values and how they want to be communicated with so that you can do that best. And you can do this by creating personas for each person or type of person that's in your community. And then that way you can say, I've created this persona of Axel, who really likes crypto projects, maybe with an artistic flair. He's always on Twitter. He'll never open Instagram. So I know that when I'm talking about like artistic projects that our DAO is going to be funding, maybe I can reach out to people like Axel on Twitter. It's simple things like that that you need to think about so you know with different projects how you're reaching people. So.
Yeah, I think first of all, DAOs stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, which it is an organization. It's maybe decentralized, it's maybe in a way owned by many people, but it is an organization. So as any organization, the purpose, demographic, the same thing, cultural factors are a big thing of a DAO. I mean, it's what the DAO is based on. It's how people will treat other people. It's very important to set the culture straight away. In general, in Web3 projects, the culture is set quite quickly, and people generally have to be part of the culture to really enjoy being part of a DAO or any Web3 project. In general, like we truly believe that it's important to have a positive atmosphere within conversations, within proposals, with other members, and from especially coming from the managerial members of the DAO, the ones that actually make stuff happen. It's important to incentivize participation and engagement. Otherwise, if people are not engaged, you have a very, very few amount of people that actually vote for proposals, and it kind of defeats the purpose of what a DAO is supposed to be. There has to be community guidelines, and I think we'll talk about community much more later. Community guidelines comes with moderators that need to make sure these community guidelines are followed, and especially with Web3 and the fact that you're building community, it's really important to take feedback and be open to receiving continuous feedback all the time, and try and make the best for the users. You're not going to do everything they say, but you have to at least keep an open mind and understanding what are the specific things that require change.
And I think feedback is one of the really powerful things of a DAO too, because you do have this audience that is like gung-ho for your project. And any feedback they give you should be really, really valuable to you because this is your target audience. So when they provide feedback, listen and encourage feedback. And then if you do listen, and especially if you do something that they've suggested, you've created like this hyper loyal person who is so grateful that somebody that maybe they've never even met has listened to them and done something that they came up with. You create like this incredibly, incredibly loyal person that are going to tell more people about you. And you'll see that when you do feedback from people, they start becoming more active in your community as well.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of positive atmosphere, I mean, it's really important. I think we're going to talk about each as part of how to create a good culture within the DAO. So a positive atmosphere, first and foremost, you need to choose your platform. I mean, there's a lot of different community platforms, such as Discord, Telegram, and others. In general, in Web3, there's a big focus in Discord and Telegram. Great ways to aggregate your community and be able to talk to people easily and just have your group out there. So it's very important to keep the positive atmosphere within discussions, within topping groups. Important for the community to understand that they need to have constructive communication and respect. So there shouldn't be any fights, no bad wording, no racism whatsoever. It's very important, and one of the ways to ensure that these things are kept is by having strong moderators that will actually take care of banning or at least warning people that don't respect the rules. It's really important, especially in Web3. I think that we accept diversity and we include everyone, all ages, all places from the world. I think it's one of the beauties of Web3, especially in a DAO. You're building something together. There's really no reason you should be excluding anyone. Within a DAO, it's very important to recognize contributions. I mean, that's part of engagement that we'll talk later, and as well as celebrating achievements. This all fortifies the loyalty between DAO members and the actual project that we're trying to work on through the DAO. And it's really important to do events and activities. I mean, you can have physical events, you can have virtual events. The idea is, keep your audience and your members engaged and having fun. So in terms of participation and engagement, it has a really huge impact on the culture of a DAO. So the DAO needs to be much more than just a token or an NFT. We shouldn't promote crypto assets as investments because that's not what you want your DAO to focus on, except if it's an investment DAO, which is different. There needs to be clear voting of events and governance to really make people feel in the community feel like they're participating in the DAO's creation and all the different projects that are happening. So of course, you're not going to ask the community to vote on every single day-to-day thing that is happening on the management side of the DAO, but you need to really make sure your community is part of major decisions and big proposals. Competitions and giveaways are always a great idea to keep people engaged. One thing about the Web3 community environment is that in general, user-generated content comes without even asking. So it's really useful to use this user-generated content, and generally members of the community value a lot when their content is being used. Even if it's for free, they just love to be a part of something. And that's what a DAO is. It's a part of something, of an organization that you can build together. So important to push people within the DAO to spread the word through social media, and also incentivizing them to be loyal to the DAO and also engaged. We can use Discord badges, roles, member spotlights. There's various ways to actually bring value, even if it's emotional value, to the holders of the token or the NFT. And I think that's something that we forget about often, is that there is real value, let's say fungible value, like revenue, rewards, tokens, NFTs, and things like that they can actually put a value on. But there's also emotional value, and the simple fact that you're a part of something and feeling that you're part of that thing is very strong and can definitely bring the difference between an engaged DAO and a not engaged DAO.
Yeah. And if you're not familiar with user-generated content, it's incredibly powerful. And it's really exciting actually when it starts to happen. Some really basic examples, because some company, like big companies, have started embracing user-generated content. Think of like the Coca-Cola bottles that had people's names on them. People started taking photos of themselves with the Coke bottle. They were doing advertisements for Coke, but they were so excited it had their names on them. Or GoPro. People could submit like really cool GoPro videos that they did doing fun things, and GoPro would shoot them out on their socials. They were making advertisements for you. It can be something cool like that. It can be something as simple as them starting to make memes about something that happened in the DAO or something cool about the token.
Yeah,
these are all things to get.
Memes are huge in Web3, especially. I think most of the memes are user generated. Like, I think it's just the people that think of something and then generate it. One other example in the Web2 world is Apple and their campaigns that were shot on iPhone. I think that's they used the idea of user generated in a much bigger way, but you get the idea, I hope. All right, great.
Community guidelines. So when you have a DAO, you are building with hopefully a large number of people. And if you worked with any large group of people or volunteers, you know some of the most important things that you can have are very, very clear rules for interactions with everybody. And how things are going to be going. So people need guidelines. It's helpful for them. You're not being like a negative Nancy. It's helpful for them to know what's expected, that there are going to be repercussions. If a troll pops in, it's nice for them to know somebody else is going to handle it for them. Or they can just say, you know, hey, this person's harassing me, and somebody's going to take care of it for them. So it's a nice thing, actually. So don't feel bad about putting rules out there, but make sure you have them. So you need to have house rules. They have to be clear, very easy to understand, and always enforced fairly. So nobody should feel like you're having favorites. And that's why you make these rules public. You can say, this is, you know, if this happens, then this happens. Very clear cause and effect. And that way it always happens the same way. It's nice and easy for everybody. And because you have that, it can support a positive and fun culture for everyone. So some things that your community guidelines can be is keeping channels on topic. You'll usually have a moderator that's trying to make sure we're staying on topic, or saying like, you know what, this is actually going towards a different channel. Maybe you should take this conversation over there. Conflict resolution and reporting processes. Again, people need to know that there's someone that they can reach out to if they need help with somebody else that's maybe popped up in the community. Dealing with trolls, abuse, harassment, etc. All of these things, it's nice to think about them before it happens. That way, when it does happen, you already know exactly what needs to be done.
Yeah, one thing on that is that for platforms like Discord and Telegram, there are bots that you can easily integrate within your servers that will like automatically delete messages that have hate speech or that have bad words or that are spamming. So there are ways to get this initial layer, and then you can decide on your side if you want to ban them or just talk to them privately, tell them that, you know, they need to change their way of participating in the community. But there are ways to scan and disable this type of talking in groups.
Exactly. Yeah. Use AI as much as possible, doing any kind of community guideline moderation and just kind of monitoring of what's happening in the groups. You usually have so many different channels happening in places. It takes so much time. So use AI to kind of help filter things down where you really only have to deal with the weird or the special ones that you need to deal with. Yeah, harassment can be very difficult to prove. I mean, hopefully that's where, you know, you can get some screenshots where you can talk to another person that's in charge of the moderation.
Yeah, I think that's part of. Then the next slide is it's.
We'll talk about moderation in just a minute. Yeah.
And moderation is 100% key in making sure that there is none of these
exactly
hate speech and harassment. But it is really hard, but there are ways to to maximize it as much as possible.
Yes, and it is something you need to think about. I mean, maybe you have a community that's going to be in an area for some reason that has a little bit more things kind of on the cusp. So think about it. Maybe there's a 3 strikes rule. If somebody gets reported 3 times for things that are kind of questionable, they go on probation. Just it's some things to think about as you're getting your DAO set up while you create these house rules that you already know how you're going to handle some of these things.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the DAO lead has a very important role. I mean, the whole team, they represent the DAO, right? So it is important that these people also respect the rules. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So rules for moderators as well. Like this says, to avoid favoritism, but also just to make sure that everybody knows what they need to do. It's helpful for everybody if they have an assigned role. And that's why you have a role in your everyday job too. So you know exactly whose responsibility it is to take care of something. And if you don't know whose role it is, then maybe you found a new role that needs to be filled by somebody else, or maybe you need to talk about that amongst the other moderators to find out how something should be approached. Feedback channels and processes. Again, feedback is incredibly helpful for everybody. If you're running a DAO, you should welcome feedback. It should also let you know what's going on in your DAO. So it's the comment box to let you know if something is really going awry, or if somebody really, really likes something. Maybe you did something by accident and it's just taking off. Listen to your feedback. Maybe you need to do more of that one thing.
Yeah, and I think feedback channels, especially within these types of Discord and Telegram platforms, you can easily see things that come up often. And I think these are things that generally you have to change quickly if they come up more often. Sometimes you have someone that says one thing, but that's the only person that talked about it. So that are generally things that you don't really need to change, but you instantly see when people are repeating the same things as other people, and so you know exactly what you need to change. Yeah,
definitely. Always look for the pattern to see if there's a repeat. But also remember that sometimes people are giving feedback and they're the only one giving the feedback for a time period because maybe somebody didn't notice it or they were afraid to speak up. So welcome feedback. Maybe quietly see if anybody else has been feeling the same way if they've been in that kind of similar situation. I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, which is why feedback channels in general, which are open, actually get the most out of it, because if someone talks about it, then someone else will realize that they're not the only one thinking about it, and so they'll get the conversation going, which is generally good.
Cool. Let's move on to moderation. I mean, we've talked to this already a little bit, but you absolutely have to have a community manager, and they need to be somebody who's done something with community management before on social media. They can't just be like, oh, I've used social media. They need to have experience. It's we've talked about this before in a different webinar, but it's the customer service mindset of welcoming feedback, coming up with ideas, letting people know that they're heard, and trying to come up with solutions to help. So you need to have probably more than one moderator. You need to have a community manager and then probably several moderators who are all aware of the rules intimately, who possibly speak different languages, especially if your DAO is worldwide, or maybe it's split between Germany and Japan for some reason. Make sure you have moderators that speak German and speak Japanese. Because
there's also a lot of Discord groups that actually have within the Discord a specific channel for Spanish talking people, English, French, so it's very important. If you do have these channels, it's very important to have a moderator for each channel.
Yeah, and they can't just be using Google Translate all the time.
Yeah, and even more than that, I mean, like in terms of different languages, it's something that we forgot to add is different time zones.
Yes, that one I definitely was gonna say.
And that's a tough one to do, because in general, you always want someone to have an eye. Not that they spend their entire day on Discord, but that every couple of minutes,
they can be on call.
Yeah, exactly. You know that someone is going to pass by and is going to be aware of the general things.
always group dynamics offline, and it's reflected similarly in DAO communities. Yeah, totally. Sometimes it's exactly the same as it is offline. I think sometimes people feel like they have more permission to be rude or in other ways online because, you can't be seen. So online, it is a little different, I think, but you need to address people the same way with respect. Like I said, big word, respect, and honesty, and be really clear about what's going on. So, yep. Or harassment. Yeah, people are more willing to do harassment, I think, a lot of the times online because of that facelessness. So it's something that moderators and community managers need to be super aware of, and making sure that they're kind of putting their foot down and saying, like, not in my house. So it's something very specific that needs to happen. You need to be doing it in different languages. You need to be aware of it in different time zones. Yeah. So this should be really, really clear. Just double checking my slide, creating, implementing content calendar. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing to add is that moderators do have a certain power within the Discord or Telegram. They don't have, of course, you need to be very careful in terms of the hierarchy of power within a certain platform. So, for example, the admin is going to have the biggest power, let's say the most power, and then community manager, and then moderators. So it's even more important to try and hire the most appropriate people for your DAO community. Generally, they actually come from the community. They are community members to start off with, and they do generally. In my experience, I've never reached out to find moderators. It's always people that come to you and suggest them being a moderator because they want to be more part in the project. So yeah, you need to be careful because there are examples where moderators have not been well chosen and they end up doing some bad things within the servers and just
And I think that goes back to the rules that we talked about setting aside. Like, the rules are not applicable just to the people in the DAO general community. They're also applicable to the moderators and even the community manager, to make sure that everybody's really clear on actions that need to be taken and repercussions. Yeah,
one thing that's easy to do, for example, is I think in Web3 there's a big problem with phishing links. Links that have been sent, you see them on Twitter, you see them on Discord, and if you don't delete the link fast enough, then there's probably people that are going to lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
So one thing that you could easily do is prevent any moderator, any user within the Discord, for example, to post any links. And for example, the only person that's allowed to post links is the community manager. This is like a simple thing to do that limits the risk for the rest of the users within the community and also ensures that there's only one person that actually can do it. So less people to be hacked, basically. And
if you're thinking about this before you get your DAO set up, that can be structured into the build of whatever platform you're on to say cannot add links. So you're not having to go back and try and rush delete links or.
In general, I think it's very important not to allow links to be posted. I think links are there's always scammers and people that are going to come into your Discord and try and send links. Always need to be ready for that.
Super fun. So on the fun side of moderation, you remember that you're also there to encourage interaction. You're there to encourage feedback from the community. You're there to encourage the community as a whole. You are doing this by creating and implementing content calendars, by running online events, by generally seeing what can build this community together and make them feel more like a community. So that is the fun side of moderation, but you do really need to hire for people that are going to be able to do the non-fun side of moderation, which is the rule following and making sure everything is staying on track. Also legally making sure that your terms of service, your privacy policy, your data protection, and all of those things are being maintained and that people are aware of them as well.
Yeah, moderators are really the ones that have their hands on the pulse of the community, right? So moderators should be able to gather feedback, bring it back to the community manager, and the community manager bring it back to the leads of the DAO. And I think that's very important to make that clear towards moderators that Their role is to keep the community positive, good vibes, but also to bring the feedback when it's necessary.
Yeah. Feedback. So we've talked about feedback a lot, but like we said, it's super duper important. And this is your slide, sorry.
Yeah, so feedback, I mean, it makes the community feel connected to your project and team. That's very important because, as we said, we want to keep them engaged. So having open feedbacks, having open specific channels for feedback, having regular calls with the community to hear them out is very important because you want your members to be a part of something bigger than themselves. That's how you keep them engaged, loyal, and how they're going to keep voting and participating within the DAO, whether it be financial participation or governance participation, which are both super important. Again, we must not treat crypto assets holders as investors in general, especially for DAOs. We have to consider them as members of an organization. Something about community that's very important is that we need to prioritize community's needs and feedback. There should be an overall management team, let's say, that drives the global vision of the DAO. But if the whole community is not happy about something, then it's generally something that you should consider.
And let's be clear, if you're not prioritizing the community's needs and feedback, then you probably shouldn't be a DAO. Otherwise, why are you being a DAO in the first place if you're not trying to listen to people and have them give you feedback and their thoughts?
Yeah. And so all of this can happen through, as we said previously, channels, surveys and polls, DAO voting procedures with specific tools that enable voting governance for DAOs. In community forums or channels, and it's very important to pay attention to how many people provide the same feedback, as you don't necessarily have to change everything because only one person said something negative. So generally, the more feedback you get, the more the communication is encouraged and transparent, and people are not scared to give their opinion. The more you'll get valuable feedback, and then you can filter it based on how many people gave the same feedback. I think that's a great way to do it. We're gonna then now talk about communication within a DAO community. And I think within any type of community in the Web3 space, communication is key from day one.
Mm-hmm.
The projects that have had the hardest times in keeping their community engaged, and therefore, if it's an NFT project, their floor price high, or if it's a token, to really manage to have their token keep growing instead of decreasing, is that open communication is a priority. Members of the DAO, so generally it's going to be the community manager that's going to provide communication within the platform channels. They will get the communication from the management team and then pass it on to the rest of the community. It's important to have clarity, to have coherence, to have consistency and transparency. It is very important to avoid radio silence, because that's the worst thing. Mm-hmm. And that really shows that you either don't care about your community or you're in too much of a trouble that you can't talk. So none of these are good. And regular updates to avoid radio silence doesn't mean that there should always be something happening in the updates. Regular updates could be, oh, we're still working on this. This is what we've achieved on that. We are a bit delayed because of this. It is being honest. It doesn't. It's better to tell the truth in terms of delays or problems or things that didn't work out as planned, than not say anything and then let the community speculate in their minds of what's going wrong, and then you'll have other problems.
Because I think when it comes to radio silence, people are always going to go negative.
Yeah.
They're always going to think they're not talking to me because they lost all the money, whatever fell through, blah, 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 blah. If you're doing radio silence because you're super stuck on a project and you feel like you can't go anywhere, do a small post, teeny tiny little post. We're still working on this. Oh my God, like my brain is going to explode. Maybe somebody in your community is a specialist at this thing that you're trying to work on and would be super happy to help you. But other than that, they at least know that something is happening and they can make their own user-generated content while they're waiting. Maybe they'll make some amazing memes about them like waiting for the news to drop about like this big thing that you're doing. But if they don't know that the big thing is getting ready to happen, they're never going to do that. And they're probably going to stop participating in the DAO itself because they don't even think it's alive anymore.
Yeah, that's a very, very fair point. And then in terms of content, the content that you're going to provide to your community for communication, it's important to have diverse content, videos, images, just text-based content. And there's a lot of ways to do it, and that's 100% a marketing thing. But you can definitely use your community to generate this content, user-generated content. But you can also use your community manager, your moderators. You can really build a team within your community that will help you out with this. And that will also help you out in creating, in doing AMAs, Twitter Spaces, or Clubhouse back in the days, blog posts, videos, podcasts, interviews, newsletters. These are all things that are important to provide the correct quantity of communication towards your members and making sure that they don't feel like they're left in the dark. I think that's very important. Make sure we often, while we're building, forget to update support resources. It could be things like just giving the new logo to the community for them to be able to use it, or banners that you created a year ago that are not relevant for now, or links that have changed, or new links that you haven't updated, like a new collection that came out and you haven't put it. So it's very important to keep that up to date, and set a schedule for updates, and that's more on the community manager side of things that needs to be able to be up to date and keep the community up to date for events, for important announcements and things like that.
And remember, there's always creative ways to do things. So if you're worried that your online support resources are not up to date and you're just like, oh my God, there's so many, we don't even know where they all are, have a contest, set a bounty, have your DAO users, do a treasure hunt to find them, and you give awards out. They don't even have to be big awards. They could be like a JPEG you make with their face on it and like a #1 prize. People like stuff like that, and it keeps them engaged and interactive, and it also helps solve a problem. So use that as content.
Yeah, it could even just be a Discord role, as a specific role that I can't think of a name out of like that, but something funny,
Yeah, I mean, keep it DAO specific if possible, but have some fun with it. People like to have fun and they like to win contests. There's different things you can do to build content that doesn't actually require that much work from your side too.
Yeah.
So take advantage of it.
100%.
Okay, education and onboarding. So it's really important to have a wide variety of content when you're onboarding new members to your DAO. Remember that people learn in all different ways. Some people prefer videos. Some people prefer to read things or like really in-depth things. Some people like pictograms. So try and have a variety as possible. The more that you have, the more likely people are going to do whatever processes you're talking about, or they're more likely to understand what the rules are going to be. So some suggestions here are putting together a wiki. There's so many free wiki things that you can build out there. They're really easy. And you can have your users actually help build the wiki for you or help maintain it. You can have a white paper, you can do an intro video with whoever's running the DAO, or maybe with some of the individual community managers, so people can get to know them by their face a little bit. A welcome guide, different types of tutorials like blog posts, different videos, Whatever you kind of feel might be a fun way to show off. Remember, people also want to be entertained a little bit. Webinars and workshops are always really great, especially as like introductions to this is what our DAO is really trying to do. Remember, when you came up with that great like purpose and vision, make a little webinar workshop saying this is what we're trying to do and this is how we're doing it so far. Also, support channels. A newbie channel in Discord is really, really helpful. I'm a huge fan personally of the buddy system, where you can assign a buddy, basically somebody who's been in the community a little bit longer, to some of the new people, whether it's 1-on-1 or 5-to-1 or 20-to-1, but just kind of like a little scout leader almost to help guide them through the system for the first small amount of time, let them get the lay of the land, and then kind of let them set free onto the DAO.
Yeah, I think one thing that's important with all of these things is that you need to make them accessible for other members of the community to be able to welcome new members easily. So have specific channels that introduce the project and tell you what to do. Have specific channels that tell you how to buy the coin or token, different ways. And I mean, as long as you have this, if you have the resources for the members to use them, like it is very rare that you go in a DAO or a Discord channel and you actually want to be a part of it. It's very rare that members of the community aren't going to help you. If they have the resources, then they're just going to either redirect you to where you need to look or actually like help you step by step.
Definitely. Okay, so then moving on from that, let's talk about trust and transparency. So there was a Harvard study that said it takes 8 positive interactions with somebody to counteract 1 negative reaction or interaction. And so it's something to really keep in mind. The minute somebody has 1 negative view of you, it takes so long to get past that, just to get even to a neutral standpoint with somebody. So really try and maintain that idea of something positive happening within your DAO and within your community, which you're going to do by being honest. If something bad has happened, don't try and sugarcoat it, because somebody's going to find out. Somebody always finds out, and then everyone is going to find out, and it's this huge negative thing that could completely demolish your DAO.
Especially in Web3, it goes super fast. Whether it is misinformation or actual facts that are found, it can go super fast, and it's really hard to overcome that negative hurdle and people that are fudding on the project.
Yeah, so I think my recommendation is, honestly, if there's even a rumor going around about something bad, it's a very positive thing to have like an AMA session to address the concerns that are happening. Be as open as possible. Oh, you heard this, that's based on this tiny little thing that's happening over here, and this is how it's affecting everything else. Or, you know what, that rumor actually was true, this is how we're fixing it. Always come with a plan. Don't just say like, yeah, that's true, sorry. Come with a plan, and but be open, honest. AMA sessions are fantastic for that kind of thing. You can do videos, but be very clear with the DAO. You need to have that trust, you need to have that transparency, or people will leave. And then your DAO is gone.
Yeah.
So again, that's clear, consistent communication, make information easy to find, and be aware that I think in Web3 people are a little more expecting a scam.
Yeah, also, yeah.
So they're going to be a little bit more on edge when they hear of something potentially happening. So I think you need to be aware of that so that you can be ready to address it as soon as possible.
Yeah. I think a lot of communities in general, and I think that comes from kind of a Web2 mindset, are scared. They don't know how the community is going to react. And I think in some instances it's true. Like if you're a bearer of bad news, generally you won't have a great reaction. But in general, I would say it's better to bring the bad news yourself. Instead of having other people either talk about the bad news, speculation about bad news.
Oh yeah, the rumor makes it worse.
Yeah, what much worse. So as a DAO, which is essentially decentralized organization, you need to have really transparent communication. So as hard as it is, it's in the long term much more beneficial to be transparent and honest.
Which is why we did trust and transparency on 2 slides, because it's so important. So keeping your members informed, just like we talked about, but also having, just don't worry about just the bad things. You need to have trust and transparency through all of your interactions with your community, including the minutes of meetings if you're having those, just general kind of proof of what's happening in the DAO. It should be readily accessible to everyone in the DAO. On-chain for records, proof of reserves, establishing a schedule for your updates is really easy way to make sure you're maintaining that communication. It's just, every second Friday, we send out a little finance update of like, this is how it's going. This is how many members we have.
And making sure that they know when this update is coming.
Exactly.
That's super important. Also, it doesn't even matter like how often you do it, you could do it once a year, but as long as it's clear that you're going to do it once a year, they're aware of it. They're not going to ask for more because that's what you initially said, or every once a quarter,
Exactly.
some things like that.
It's very easy. You just tell them once a quarter, we're going to do this. Just remember that you have to set and stay on that schedule, or they're going to start to think negative things again. So use your DAO voting system as needed. Like Axel said earlier, you don't have to use it for everything, but it is a really powerful tool. So I think take advantage of that.
100%.
Keep your educational resources up to date. And like I mentioned earlier, the AMA sessions and live streams are really, really a powerful tool that you can use. The internet is faceless, so it's really great to give a face to people within the DAO for them to be able to talk to you directly, ask questions, and have it be a person. Yeah,
we know that in general, Web3 people like to remain undoxed, but there is always value in being doxed in terms of providing trust and transparency to your members. And
remember, you don't actually have to show your face, but even your voice is a really helpful thing. Whether you want to use an avatar or just not have the camera on, it's more powerful, I think, to have a face visible for people to really see a person. But having even just saying like, I'm Ellie and I'm typing this right here, right now, ask me any questions, I'm here to answer them, is something that people really appreciate. So.
So now about scaling, in terms of scaling your community. Once your project picks up, I mean, it goes pretty quick in terms of having a large community on these platforms. So you need to make sure that everything that we've talked about previously is on point. It's clear to yourself as the managing team. And it's clear to your community manager, it's clear to your moderators, and it's clear to your members. And to do that, it's very important to keep everything consistent, maintain robust security measures, and that it falls on the responsibility of the community manager and the moderators. But also, there are so many bots on Telegram and Discord that you can just install and make sure that they will take care of all the scammers and all these trolls and things like that. The growth, of course, in any case, should be sustainable. You don't want to grow too fast, because managing a growing community is very tough already. If it grows too fast, then you'll have to hire like a bunch of moderators and a bunch of things. And when you do that fast, you hire the wrong people.
Or they don't get the training that
they don't get, exactly. And so that in turn creates negative things within the community.
And that may even be that you limit the number of people who can join at a time.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's something to consider, but I think it would be a positive, honestly, to say like only 50 people a month can join, or whatever your number is.
Yeah, it depends of what your DAO is, of course. But I think it is important. I mean, for example, initially you could have a public DAO and then a public Discord, and then at some point when you realize that it's growing too fast, then you make it private, you know, or you have various ways to share the Discord link or things like that. But yeah, being able to control the growth is important, because a community stays strong if it's controlled in a way, not controlled like you control the people, but you control the growth. And if growth is too fast, then you won't be able to even know people that are coming.
Yeah, and I think you're trying to maintain the cohesiveness of the community.
Yeah.
You're not trying to brainwash them, but you're trying to get them into the same mindset. And it's really hard to do that if there's so many people flooding and that they're not able to get this kind of onboarding process. So it's better to keep it a little slow but super steady than to just get a dump of people and then trying to figure out how to solve all that. Yeah,
and I think especially for a DAO, I mean, for NFT projects or meme coins or things like that, the quality of the people are less important. You know, if you are in a DAO, you want to make sure that the people that are in the DAO have the same mindset, because you're essentially trying to build something out. Yeah, controlling this growth, even maybe having like a sort of monitoring process when people sign up, you know, even having like a application form.
Yeah.
These kinds of things are all things that are doable and in some cases super necessary. So yeah.
Yeah.
And others not at all, you know, like in much larger DAOs, it's not as necessary as that, but
we're running a little behind.
Yeah, let's go on.
Scaling.
Yeah, so scaling continued. It's important to track the growth. So yeah, know what's going on. It's important to continue social events, have online and offline events. It's very important to have ambassadors who will represent the brand and the DAO outside of the DAO, and mentors within the DAO that can help people out. I think consider hiring from the community is one of the most important parts. I think having a community gives you a chance to actually hire people that understand the DAO, and that's very important, I think.
I think it's an ideal situation is to hire from within your community.
Yeah. And I mean, funding community projects, that's most of the DAOs do offer grants. And I think that's very, very important to make your community feel like you are supporting them. And then, yeah, as a DAO, as you grow, you become more and more important within the whole ecosystem. It's important to join conferences and big events to put your name out there and clearly be one of the key players in the DAO ecosystem. Yeah, I think we need to go a bit faster, but yeah.
So now we're into social media, which most people are fairly familiar with. So we'll try and get this a little shorter for this portion. So social media fundamentals, absolutely essential for having a DAO. You need to have a public face out there. So whether you're doing it on X, previously known as Twitter, Discord, Telegram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, that should really depend on what you've determined your audience is. And you should be doing your social media where your audience is. So if they are Gen Z specific, you're probably going to be on TikTok. If they're, you know, business people that are very kind of like buttoned up, or they're just very business focused, they're probably going to be on LinkedIn. So you really just need to kind of figure out who your customer persona is and approach them where they should be. And then that's where you should put your public facing social media. You should be maintaining your brand identity and messaging that you have there, whether you're casual and relaxed, if you're very much focused just on the environment, whether you're out there helping with charities, your brand identity should reflect that. And it should be, again, reflected in how you're talking and the types of content that you're putting out there on social media. As Axel mentioned, you can have a public versus private. So you may have a private VIP Discord channel. And that's something that you might get later on, or it might be something you start from the front and you kind of funnel people through from your public to your private.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's quite easy to do earlier on is token gated channels. So based on the token that you own, whether it's an NFT or an actual token, then you can there are, again, bots that actually let you connect your wallet and then gives you a specific role. And that specific role gets you access to certain channels. So I think it's a great way to do that.
Social media activities, similar things like we discussed earlier in the DAO when you're doing community building is to make sure you're doing community updates. It's great to do like welcomes to new members or updates on things that are going on, event promotions, maintaining your content calendar, having the diverse content, including user-generated content, as well as educational resources for people to learn more about your DAO or the types of things that you're doing through your DAO. So I think that's really important. And I'm sorry we're going a little fast, but we have so many more slides still. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, like everything, like every type of organization, social media growth is really important to expand the community and the reach. There's a lot of benefit in expanding the community within a DAO. And so it's important to understand how to channel this social media growth. So of course, there's the influencer collabs and partnership path. There's organic discovery that generally comes from word to mouth and other members of the DAO talking to other members of the Web3 community. There's also outreaching could be to different DAOs, just could be to different individuals, could be to key opinion leaders that actually could bring a lot of people within the DAO. It's important to collaborate with other projects, but it's even more important to collaborate with projects that actually make sense to collaborate with. Doing marketing campaigns. I mean, that's up to your priorities within your DAO. If your DAO is a DAO that will fund medical research, I think there's very little need focus on marketing campaigns, even though marketing campaigns could bring more money within the DAO, and then therefore more projects to fund.
So maybe something to consider.
Yeah. Viral posts, content.
We all want viral posts. Do your best. Create fun content, and it might go viral, but it's definitely never going to be a guaranteed thing. And never trust somebody that tells you they're going to give you a viral post. So just as a note right there.
Yeah. Don't trust anybody. I mean, social media, we we need to be aware of what works, what doesn't work, and ask the community. You have a direct access to the community, so ask them what they like. Be able to manage crisis quite quickly. Have a direct tech support customer service channel, specifically, for example, on Discord or on Telegram. You can easily have ticket channels where people can open tickets and then speak to moderators or community managers, and that then can, if needed, link to the management team. Be aware of social analytics, trends, general sentiment, and social media is an ever-evolving game. So you need to be open for continuous iterations and improvements within every single thing in your social media strategy. Yeah,
and remember that your public-facing social media, like LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, is going to be a bit of a different animal than the community management of your DAO. It's more public-facing, which means you might be getting different interactions from a wide variety of people because it is, again, public-facing. So your community manager for your social media is going to maybe need to be a different person, or at least have a different skill set that they can apply. We've dropped several memes in here. If you didn't understand any of them, then you probably shouldn't be a social media community manager, or you need to study up. But just remember that social media is weird. Like he said, it's always evolving, but you do need to have that customer service mindset at all times when it comes to something like this. So, I think we're almost exactly on time, guys. Final things are legal considerations. Remember that you need to follow the rules and regulations that apply to your jurisdiction or your area of operations. If you have any questions, get legal advice. You don't want to make an assumption and then realize, halfway through your project that you've gone completely awry, and then there's no salvaging it because you've done something actually illegal and you've made it public. So be aware, ask for legal help if needed. Remember that if you're doing anything with coins, You cannot be giving financial advice. You can tell people how excited you are. You cannot tell them to invest in this coin. So especially when it comes to Web3 and anything when it comes to tokens, be aware that you have to walk a very, very careful line about giving financial advice. There's been a legal ruling now that there's even certain emojis that you cannot use because they're deemed to be financial advice. The rocket emoji, the chart going up, and the money bag all have been ruled that they imply, that a project is going to go up and make lots more money. So be aware that there are things like that out there. Reach out for legal advice if you have questions. You need it. Don't make assumptions. And on that note, this webinar, this webinar was put on by Storm Partners, which is a Web3 based company. We offer marketing, growth, legal and compliance, finance, fundraising, digital transformation, and education and events for Web3 specific companies. So if you're Web3, we've seen it, we've done it, or we've helped someone do it.
Yep.
Right now we're focusing on ecosystems, which is why we're very excited to be doing this webinar on behalf of the Cardano Foundation. Fun fact, this webinar was actually funded by a DAO.
Yep.
So the Catalyst DAO in Cardano provided a grant for this series of webinars, and we're very excited to be here. And this concludes, almost exactly on time, guys, our webinar. We're happy to answer any questions. While you're typing them out, I will say the next webinar, like I mentioned, is on July 24th at 3 p.m. It's with DJ Bodden, the Director of Operations of Storm Partners, and he'll be doing specifically how to build a DAO on Cardano. So it's a very handy one to get into if you're wanting to build a DAO. Does anybody have any questions? We'll give it once. We'll give it twice. If you have any questions after this webinar, this will be posted on YouTube shortly. Oh, we have one. There we go. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah, so this webinar will be posted along with the rest of them on YouTube on the Decentral House YouTube channel. If you have any questions specifically that you think of later, though, you're welcome to reach out to Axel or myself. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Telegram. We're happy to help with that. Thank you so much, guys, and have a wonderful day.
All right, ciao.